is Denver Sports Tonight on this Tuesday night in the Mile High City. He's Marcello Romano. I'm Will Petersen. Rolling with you for the next hour. Cello, I had an epiphany last night when I was writing my column for denversports.com, and I got to give you credit.
The 5 stages of grief?
I was going to say, I got to give you some credit because you've been hammering this. We've been doing this show together a bunch the last few weeks, and you and I had talked this through, and it kind of inspired me, and I want to run this idea by you.
Okay.
I think the Broncos would be crazy to not take a quarterback in round 1 of the NFL draft. I think when Sean Payton's head hits the pillow on Thursday night after the first round, he has to have a rookie QB on his roster. And I will get into the reasons with you, but based on the state of the league and 7 of the 8 quarterbacks in the NFL's quarterfinals being first-round picks, the lone exception being Brock Purdy, who's on a bit of an all-star roster, not only do you have to take a first-round quarterback, but if you have to trade up, you do it. If you have to take a guy in that 12 range, you do it. And if you have to trade back, that's okay, as long as you take Michael Penix Jr. at the end of the first round. But no excuses for this team's leadership to not take a rookie QB in round 1. What do you think?
All right. Well, for clarity then, you said a couple weeks ago that you needed to jump up high into that the upper echelon of the first round.
And that is still 100% my preference for clarity. Okay. Williams, May, Daniels. For clarity, I want one of those 3. But if the draft chips don't fall and you can't trade up and those 3 teams say, sorry, we're taking them 1, 2, 3, we're not open for business, okay, you have to pivot to one of the other 3 names, McCarthy, Nix, or Penix.
And you wouldn't wait. You think everyone – so say those 3 go 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. And then we're left with the other crop of quarterbacks, the Bo Nixes, the J.J. McCarthys, the Michael Penix Jr., who you already mentioned, and you think that that's worthy, that wouldn't be a reach at 12, or you're saying let's play roulette a little bit, and if we have to drop down, if they drop down, just stay away from the number 26, please.
Yes, the Lynch.
Yes.
Paxton Lynch.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. In the last few days, mock drafts from major outlets, guys who are connected, the Mel Kiper Jr.'s of the world, the Matt Millers of the world. One has mocked McCarthy to Denver, and one has mocked Nix to Denver, both at 12. So, yeah, I think if you're going to strike out on the top 3, then you probably do. And that may be a reach. I've told you I think that may be a reach, but I don't care at that point because you don't have a quarterback in Broncos country. If you don't want to, then okay, get back to 27. I'll do you one better. And then take Penix before the night closes up shop. But there is just no excuse for this franchise to not have one of those 6 names, the 6 names we've been talking about for weeks, on their roster come Friday morning.
I don't know that I can completely get on board with that, because if you're making a decision just because of something that you do not have, even if it's not the right decision, what'll be different this go-around, Will, is that I don't think George Payton is making this selection. And we know when he didn't love a quarterback, we saw what he did a couple years ago. The proof's in the pudding. He went with, what do you call it, the safest pick in the draft, which was PS2. Now, there's other players that aren't quarterbacks that would be worthy of that selection at 12. If you're going to package something up and say, hey, they're not moving and none of the teams that are in front of you seem like they're going to go and target one of those guys and you can get an extra pick out of it, then I think I'd be okay with it. I've told you already, I don't hate the J.J. McCarthy move, and I'll be interested to see this spring where he kind of elevates to or drops to, because all we've heard, even after a week at the Senior Bowl, is conflicting reports. I came on here last week because I heard Klatt in the morning say how good Drake May was, and then I heard Cecil last night say he didn't impress, or he doesn't impress him. And then you heard about the struggles with maybe Nix. I had conflicting reports out of the Senior Bowl with Nix and Penix. So, I mean, obviously, we're not going to base it all off just that week where you're playing with people that you don't know, and it's before your pro days, and it's before the combine, and all that different stuff. I don't know that I could be like, yeah, let's just take it to take it. And I don't know if that's what you're saying necessarily, but it kind of sounds like a couple weeks ago you were like, I want one of the 3. You do whatever you have to do to get up there.
I do.
And I'm on board with that.
My stance hasn't changed on that. But, yes, I am kind of leaning towards take it to take it if you have to. And I think I've made it clear, and I hope my article makes it clear, that could involve getting to the top 5. That could involve staying at 12. That could involve trading back to the late 20s. But you still need to take a QB at one of those spots, either premium, middle of the pack, or back end. It has to be a quarterback, and it has to be one of those 6 names that could all possibly go in the first round.
So where'd the epiphany come from? Was it something you ate?
No, the epiphany came from, can you imagine the excitement, or frankly, lack thereof, at training camp if fans have to watch Jarrett Stidham versus journeyman QB X compete to be the starter? I mean, Broncos fans aren't apathetic yet.
No, but they're on the verge.
We're human like everyone else, Cello, and we could become apathetic. And the best way to get dozens and dozens of fans to come to your training camp, and I of course say that facetiously, is Jarrett Stidham versus Taylor Heineke for QB1. And unless you take a first-round QB, he's not starting week 1. So that's where this epiphany came from. One of these 6 gentlemen, Williams, May, Daniels, McCarthy, Nix, Penix, has to be a Bronco night 1 in the NFL draft, because guess what? Then one of the 6 of them certainly has a chance to be your starter week 1. That gets the fan base rejuvenated. That gets training camp buzzing again. And that makes us feel like for the first time since Peyton Manning retired, we're actually back on the correct path with a rookie. They've tried veteran after veteran, Cello. John Elway tried Joe Flacco, Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater. None of them worked. Even his replacement, George Payton, tried Russell Wilson. Unfortunately, Russell Wilson didn't work. Broncos country isn't going to get excited about another veteran. We've tried 4 of them. Since Peyton retired, they have tried 1 rookie, and that was Paxton Lynch in 2016. And because he was a bust, it feels like 8 years later, we're still scared.
I will say, I mean, listen, you're correct in saying that Broncos country is on the verge of apathy. So you're saying what would give buzz around this squad is, and I agree with you, if it's one of those top 3 guys, you got nothing but excitement and promise of what the future could hold for this squad. But if you don't, say, my fear would be, Will, is that you end up with McCarthy, or you end up with Nix, or you end up with Penix, and it kind of feels like you're getting that secondary scraps off the quarterback market. And that's just talking about where it stands now. Things can definitely change in the coming months, and I expect they will. You're going to see a little bit of jostling here and there for those guys and how they're rated. But I don't know that you're getting thousands and thousands of people if you go with Bo Nix.
Well, I mean, the dozens thing is obviously a little facetious. They're always going to get a few thousand people at camp because Broncos country is just that great. Maybe not a thousands and thousands of bump that you would get for Caleb Williams. Sure, I'll give you that. But at the same time, this franchise didn't take Josh Allen in 2018. And that's because John Elway's biggest blunder as GM, many think, myself included, he was still scarred by what happened in 2016. He thought it was too soon to take another quarterback 2 years later. He goes Bradley Chubb instead, and the veteran carousel that I just outlined began. And we
Furthermore, Will, is that they were scarred by their own success. You know, that they built the most prolific offense the league had ever seen, right?
Yep.
And they fell short against the Seahawks. Within 2 short years, he had completely revamped that roster to be defense-focused. And when they won the Super Bowl, and I've said this to James, I said it like the day or 2 after the Super Bowl win, when John and Gary are up on the stand accepting the Lombardi trophy, they were caught talking to each other, and they said, we can win all kind of ways. And they won defensively. So in John's mind, after having that success, and he knows that Peyton didn't play at the highest level that final season, and even having Brock kind of come in and steer the ship for a while, it wasn't great quarterback play that got him there. What drove them to that championship was, of course, their defense, and they've kind of focused on. That's why you had the Bradley Chubb pick. He wanted to kind of recreate the DeMarcus Ware Von Miller aspect on the defense and then build the defense and say, I just need a quarterback that's not going to screw it up.
Yeah, but I be careful here on your timelines. I'm not trying to call you out, but if he felt that way, then why did he take Paxton 2 months after Peyton retired in the first round?
You have time to grow.
But you're telling me in 2018 he thought, well, I can win it as defense in 2015, but in 2016 I took a quarterback. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I think my point of he was scarred by Paxton is more than arrogance. He thought he could win it with defense.
I think it's probably a combination of both.
Probably.
It's, to be honest, I'm not saying he wasn't gun shy when they had the opportunity to go get a quarterback after they failed with Paxton. I think you're probably close to as being right there as well. But that also, the predecessor of that was having success defensively and saying, if we can get Case Keenum to play at the level that he did when he rolled in for Minnesota that one magical year there, and we have a good enough defense, then we can compete with anybody.
Sure, but I just think the reason the whole idea came to life was because Broncos country is sick of veterans. They're sick of them because they've tried to strike, lightning in a bottle again ever since Payton retired. And they did it with guys like Keenum and Flacco, who were probably on the tail end. They did it by mortgaging the farm for Russell Wilson. There is no way you can sell to this fan base that even the top-tier veteran, even if we lived in fantasy land and you could afford Baker Mayfield, that he's going to lead you back to the promised land. You just can't. We're too scarred. We have too many evidence that doesn't work unless you have an all-time Hall of Famer like Peyton Manning. And you look at the playoffs now, and what are these teams doing? They're finding young guys in the NFL draft that are taking them. I just mentioned a few minutes ago, 7 of the 8 quarterbacks in the quarterfinals this year were former first-round picks.
Yeah.
You need to take a first-round pick. You do. It is your turn. It is your time. You must select a first-round pick on Thursday night, April 25th at quarterback.
And we'll see, it remains to be seen what they'll actually do. I mean, I think another thing to add to your point there, Will, is that none of the veterans that are available are sexy. Even if you say Baker, I don't think that gets Broncos country elated that, hey, we have Baker Mayfield. Now, would it be an improvement? I don't know. I don't know how much of an improvement. Plus, all we have heard about Sean Payton and his offense is that it's not one that's easy to grasp. Mm-hmm. And whoever it is, take year one, whether it's a veteran or you go the rookie route, I would probably prefer the rookie route because you have time to build it. If you have someone that you're trying to say is a bridge quarterback and you want to compete with him, we saw what a Hall of Famer, his trajectory was a Hall of Fame career, and Russell Wilson did in 1 year with Sean Payton. They had to scrap his offense and give him something different because he couldn't comprehend it all or he couldn't run it all to the way that Sean Payton expected it to be ran. So if you do go out with one of those guys, I think the only way I'm good with it is if you package something up and you get another pick out of it, if it's in that later part of the first round.
Well, I think if you realistically move back from, say, 12 to 27, the asking price would certainly be a second-round pick and probably another pick as well. Right now, they don't have a second-round pick. So now you're getting Penix at 27. You get a pick in the second round, and you probably get another pick later. That may be appealing to Broncos country. We solve our rookie QB issue. We get another premium selection in the second round that we didn't have before. And for a franchise that has seemingly subtracted draft picks the last couple of years, we are now adding draft picks. Frankly, Cello, we both agree on this much. They need more bodies at camp of legitimate NFL players.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is through the NFL draft.
And not mortgage it all up to go up and get one of the top 3 or how they're rated now.
Unless you think Caleb Williams is Patrick Mahomes 2.0. And then you do it. Then you do mortgage the future because you're going to have 1-2 really, really bad years with Caleb Williams.
KJ, he just said doo-doo.
Did I? But then his talent is going to transcend a fairly mediocre roster. I mean, the Chiefs' defense this year is the best Mahomes has ever had. And last time I checked, he still already has 2 rings. And you know why he has those 2 rings? Because he surrounded himself with 2 other great players. A great wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, who was there for one of the rings, and then maybe the best tight end in NFL history in Travis Kelce. And I'm not saying the best tight end in NFL history grows on trees, but I am saying that if you think Williams is Mahomes 2.0, then yeah, you're willing to take that gamble. But you're right. Unless you're convinced of that, then it may not be worth it to get all the way up to 3 or 2 or 1 just to simply appease the fan base.
If you had 12, say Brock Bowers is there.
Tight end out of Georgia, stud.
Yeah. And
speaking of potentially great tight ends, yes.
And you don't have to do anything with your draft lineup as is. You could, obviously make other trades with other selections, but say he's there, you would pass on him for a quarterback. Or is it just, and I guess.
So you're telling me Nix, McCarthy, and Bowers are all on the board at 12?
Yes.
I would love to see how the first 11 shook out to get to that position. But if Nix, McCarthy, and Bowers are all on the board at 12, you have to take Nix or McCarthy. You do.
All right.
It stinks that you got to pass on Bauer. Because imagine this. Say Russell Wilson had worked out this year, and they had won, 10, 11 games, and then Brock Bowers was on the board for you. Probably not that late. You'd be picking 18th or 19th. But long story short, if you had a QB, this fan base would be salivating to get the first tight end that is worth a hoot on this roster since who? Julius Thomas? Owen Daniels? I mean, it's been a decade.
Yeah.
They've been hunting for a tight end. Unfortunately, you don't have that luxury because you need the quarterback before you can really do anything else. It sounds like to me if Bowers, Nix, and McCarthy are there at 12, you would take Bowers.
Well, I'd be leaning towards it. Yeah, definitely.
Then who's your quarterback?
Well, I think you think all those guys are going to go in the first round, no matter what. You think after Michael Penix gets his medical done, that people are going to be like, yeah, I know that it doesn't shake out well, but anybody can be hurt at any time. We're going to take a flyer on him. What I think I'm actually hearing from you is not only do you have to make this selection, Will, it has to be the right one.
Of course.
And that's not something like it's a bit of roulette when it comes to the draft, as far as just even first round quarterbacks, right? I mean, how many of them pan out? I know that you said 7 of the 8 that were in the playoffs a couple weeks ago are all former first round picks, but I mean, none of them got there just immediately. I mean, Joe Burrow is a guy that you could think of recently. Do any of these guys strike you as that? Because you're going to have, out of those 6 quarterbacks, how many are going to flourish and how many are going to just fizzle?
Yeah, I mean, one's probably going to be a future Hall of Famer. 2 are going to be future starters in this league, and the other 3 are going to hold clipboards. I mean, that's just, look at the 2018 draft. That's the perfect example, right? And Josh Allen, probably a future Hall of Famer. Baker Mayfield, a serviceable starter. Josh Rosen is sitting in a pool somewhere, and Sam Darnold's holding a clipboard. So that's kind of how these tend to shake out.
Yeah.
I believe Lamar was 2018 too, was he not?
Yeah, end of the first round.
Last pick of the first, projecting to be a future Hall of Famer with his second MVP coming up. So, yeah, I think saying out of these 6, Cello, one of them is going to become an all-time great. 2 are going to become serviceable starters. 3 of them will, make backup money. That's the way it goes. That's why you use the word roulette. It's a good word. But you're also paying Sean Payton $18 million a year to figure these things out.
Yeah. My fear is that somebody pissed off the football gods along the way, and we haven't had the benefit of what Pittsburgh has had as quarterback play. The Packers have just been spoiled for the last 30 years.
We've got to be a little careful here. We also had John Elway and Peyton Manning and 3 Lombardis. We've had it pretty good.
Exactly. But and how long has it been now?
8 years.
We're going on a decade now. And to be honest with you,
we're also not the Cleveland Browns.
Where this team, no, I mean, they got to 20 plus, and they tried everything. They did everything you said. They did veterans, they did rookies, they did it all.
And they're still searching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco was their quarterback.
Right.
I mean, they're probably content with Deshaun going forward, but what I'm saying is unless it's the right pick, and you said it yourself, how much is Sean Payton making to figure these things out? You got to have that selection. The Chiefs were very lucky to end up with Pat Mahomes because they were in the sweepstakes to go up and get Paxton Lynch as well as the Cowboys were, and it didn't work out in their favor, and then they were smart enough to make that move the following year and bring Patrick Mahomes, by the way. And the dude has been nothing but great since he stepped on a football field. I was at that first game.
Yeah.
When they were resting their starters because they were in the postseason, the Broncos weren't, and then it was Paxton versus Mahomes, and it was like, oh man, this will be sweet. Maybe this is going to be the rivalry for years. Now Paxton didn't even play all that bad in that game, but do you remember Talib's quote afterwards, right?
Yeah, I saw enough of Patrick Mahomes to know that Alex
dude's
Smith
going to be a star. Yeah.
Well, it was a star, but also the funniest quote was, "I saw enough of Mahomes to know Alex Smith's going to be looking for a job."
Yep.
Yeah.
We need that guy.
We do, and you can't find that guy unless you have the guts to take him, right? Because in 2018, if you had the guts to take him, we'd be talking about our 4th, 5th year in a row making the playoffs with Josh Allen as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. They took Bradley Chubb instead. He's a fine player in his own right, but he certainly never became Von Miller. So I think what I'm getting at here, Cello, I'm not telling you that, hey, if you take a QB, your problems are magically fixed.
No, because you get end up like the Panthers, Will.
But at least if you take a QB, you're in the sweepstakes. You bought the lotto ticket. Might as well go check the numbers. If you don't buy the ticket, you can't win. And by taking I've seen mocks with edge rushers. I've seen mocks with corners out of Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, corner out of Alabama, probably a great player. They have a corner out of Alabama right now who's maybe the best corner in the NFL. They went 5-12 and then 8-9. Corners don't win you Super Bowls. Quarterbacks do.
Well, and I brought up the question to you a couple weeks ago of why would you have taken this job if you knew you didn't like what was in place already? And now it's basically like you're going to rip it down to the studs almost because there's templates on how to build football teams, Will, and you could say, hey, this is what the Chiefs did, and this is what the Niners did, and this is what the Packers did. The difference is those rosters are farly superior to what will be the remnant of the roster from this year. And we don't even know what all decisions are going to be made. But there's a lot of heads that may be on the chopping block. And if you get rid of all those to build up draft capital, then you could find yourself in a situation which Broncos country, if you think apathy's on the verge, is if they end up where the Panthers are this year. And, yeah, they got their guy, right, in Bryce Young. But that talent on that roster wasn't sufficient for you to have that kind of success right away. And you could find yourself – and you said you were fine with it. You get that rookie quarterback. You lose a bunch of pieces as far as this roster is concerned, which is many holes to begin with. And you could be, 3 games, 4 games, win, and you're fine with it?
Yes.
As long as there's something going forward?
If there's a QB to build around going forward, sure, because I can play devil's advocate all day with you.
Would you take Bryce Young right now? I guess is my question.
Of course, but let me play devil's advocate. You want to cite the Panthers? That's cool. I'll cite the Texans. They made the playoffs in C.J. Stroud's first year, and it's not like anyone was writing great things about that roster. They had won 3 games, and they elevated to 10 wins this year and won a playoff game. So you can go glass half empty and say, hey, you may only win 2 games, and it may look like Bryce Young. Cool. You may find the next great in C.J. Stroud, and you may win 10 games and shock the NFL world and win a playoff game next year. We don't know how it's going to play out because we literally saw both examples this year. Carolina, the worst of the worst, and Houston, the best of the best.
That's fair, and that goes back to leadership and whether you believe you have the right pieces in place here to make those type of jumps. Well, and we didn't see year one when we had a guy who was going to the Hall of Fame, and all he wanted was this coach to be here. He asked for it to happen, and they started 1-5, had a crazy middle part of the season, and then it all fell apart at the end. I mean, Mike, that's where you have to take that into account, too. Who's calling the shots?
Right, and Greg Penner has said that Sean Payton will call the shots. So I have no choice but to accept that and move forward because that none of us can change. But the direction they go in the first round is still in the future. So, I know there's radio hosts who get blue in the face. They should fire Sean Payton. They should move on from Sean Payton. They're not going to. So I'd rather talk about what
I'm not advocating for that.
And I know you're not either. But what I'm saying is I'm focusing now on things that can happen in the future. And what needs to happen in the future is taking a first-round quarterback because that's still on the table. We'll know that answer in 2.5 months. So because Greg Penner believes in Sean Payton, I have no choice but to believe in Sean Payton, and I want to see Sean Payton prove it wasn't all just Drew Brees, that he can take a young quarterback, and he can build this up.
I think that's the biggest problem I have.
Can be a future Hall of Fame coach.
Is that all? That's all he was really had or known.
It's Drew Brees, of course.
Yeah.
It's the biggest knock on his resume. It's a lot of the Brady Belichick. Was it Brady? Was it Belichick? The early returns look like it was Brady. The early returns on Peyton Brees look like it was Brees. Peyton needs to prove the doubters wrong.
And as far as development goes, I don't think we've ever seen that with him. And I know people will say that he developed Drew Brees. I think they worked well together. Drew Brees wasn't like a slouch when he was in San Diego.
No, not at all.
I mean, he was a decent quarterback, and until John Lynch ripped his shoulder out, that was why he was playing above Phillip Rivers at that point. They had already made the decision that they were going to move on. It wasn't because of his play. It was because they had drafted Phillip Rivers, and then Drew Brees got hurt in the final game of the season. But that's all he's kind of known. I'm trying to think about other stops that he had with different quarterbacks where you saw, oh, man, the development there was out of this world.
No, but you're not wrong. But again, Greg Penner's paying him $18 million. So for that amount of money, he should be able to develop a QB. I'm eager to find out if he can or not.
I think the question is then why didn't Russell get developed?
Because Russell's 35. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, especially when their legs.
But there was no way to. So that's my point. Is that there wasn't like a mending of or a melting of the minds for them to have success together. It was like. I think Russell probably acquiesced quite a bit more than Sean did, to be honest with you, but I don't think that there was that. Like, especially when you were that Christmas Eve game, you think about it. You go back, if they win that game and then they win the next game against the Chargers, then the Raiders game means something completely different, and we're talking about something totally different going into this offseason. But it didn't. It was like a decision of out of stubbornness almost that's why we find ourselves here. And it may have started in Detroit the week or two prior when everyone lost their cool on the sideline.
Yeah, it very well may have. It very well may have. So now, Sean Payton, you've got to prove to your boss and you've got to prove to the fan base you can develop a quarterback. Never done that before in your career. Now is the time to do it.